SUP is changing, so let's talk about it. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Wachowski, and you are listening to the Staggered Stance podcast, where I give my staggered stance on everything and anything stand-up paddleboarding as well as personal and lifestyle. I've also kind of dipped in a little bit more into environmental sustainability, and I really want to start making more episodes on that because I do feel like that is a really important topic to talk about. That I feel like, especially in my community, or just maybe like the paddling community in general, it isn't a super big topic just because that's not really what paddling is about. But if we can get like more people to talk about it, I think it would be really fun and really good. And I don't know, I'm really big on environmental sustainability, so I kind of want to bring my thoughts and opinions and my views into the world of stand-up paddleboarding just so we can have a bigger conversation. This isn't what the episode is about, but that's just something that I really wanted to talk about. I also want to talk about more about mental health and everything, and just like internal like realizations that I've had a while like in the past, I don't know, like few weeks, because I've done a lot of maturing and changing in this past month. I was at a really bad headspace at the beginning of the year, just kind of like struggling, trying to figure out who I was, what I'm going to do, and now I feel like I can kind of handle myself a little bit more, like, hey, maybe I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm okay with taking baby steps and kind of learning bit by bit what I want to do. Okay, so today's episode I want to talk about SUP and how it's been changing, because in the past few years, especially since I've started specifically, it has changed so much. And I don't know if you think it's if it's for the good or for bad. And while I do definitely have my biases, I will try to have this conversation in a more like neutral way. Just kind of put all of the ideas in front of you just so you can like pick and choose what you feel like you believe, or like just so you have an idea of the general conversation rather than just my biases, just because I do feel like it's very common for people to just kind of talk about what they specifically think when it comes to a wide topic that has a lot of different points of views. And so today the conversation is going to be about how SUP is changing and whether you think it's changing for the good or for the bad. But before we get into it, I do want to give a little like life update. If you don't want to hear about it, you can skip ahead just a little bit. But I do really want to talk about a few things because a lot of stuff has happened since I've filmed my last episode. I think the last episode that I filmed was like, I think about like 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I pre-filmed a lot of them, and so I never really have like sat down and recorded an episode for a while. The last week I was with some friends. A few of my friends visited me in Sayulita, and so I was able to hang out with them a lot, and I had so much fun. It was so amazing. I love having friends here. I love playing host. It's very fun. And also, I know this is so random, but I do want to talk about a crazy experience that I had while I was hanging out with them. So back in the day, during like COVID years, like 2020, 2021, I was a TikToker. I know it's not a surprise considering how I am really big on social media and content creation, but I used to be a TikToker, and during that time I used to be obsessed with a show called She-Ra the Princesses of Power. It's a Netflix series, and that was like my obsession through COVID. That was what pushed me through COVID. That was what like kept me motivated, kept me like energized, kept me happy. And so I would post about it. I was part of the TikTok She-Ra community fandom, whatever you like to call it. And I had a specific niche where I would make earrings. I made little earrings with the themes of the show, whether that be like specific items of people, or what did I make? I just made items from the show, and I took on people's recommendations. And so I was a very like niche person in the community, but because it was so specific, a lot of people in the community knew me as the earring person. And so back in the day, I even remember joining a Discord group? Oh my god. A Discord group where it was just like a ton of She-Ra fans, and we just kind of like talked about the show and just had fun and everything. And I remember when I joined that Discord group, there was someone who immediately recognized as me, like, oh my god, you're the person that made earrings. And I ended up making earrings for that person and shipping it to them and everything. It was really fun. But anyways, I was a She-Ra content creator, and that was over 2 years ago, and I don't post that anymore. I've privated all of my TikTok She-Ra YouTube videos, or not YouTube videos, TikTok videos because they are so freaking embarrassing. They are so embarrassing. And I almost like kind of wish I could forget that part of my life. I wish I could. But that's also like a really big part of like how I've continued to become a content creator. And even though I kind of burnt out on that, it is like a really important part of my content creation development. But anyways, when I was out with my friends, I was kind of minding my own business, and a person approached me and was like, "Oh my God, are you the person that like used to make TikToks?" And I was very confused, like, because I hadn't made TikTok videos in 2 years. So the fact that someone was recognizing me now, I was like, you know what, this person has got like the wrong person. I'm like, I think you have the wrong person. Like thinking to myself, like, I haven't made TikTok videos in 2 years. And she was like, no, you used to make TikTok videos, and you were like posting about the show. And I'm like, what show was it? And they were like, it was She-Ra. And I'm like, oh my God, I just got recognized from my old TikTok videos. I wasn't even like incredibly popular. I know I was well known in the fandom, but I was probably getting like maybe 1,000, 2,000 views on my TikToks tops. So it wasn't even like a huge TikTok like channel. I wasn't incredibly popular. So the fact that someone recognized me for my TikTok videos the other day, it was insane. And I was like legit like shaking over 15 minutes after that situation. I was just kind of in shock. Like I almost kind of like shut down, because I was like, oh my God, this person just recognized me. People can recognize me. But anyways, that was something that happened while my friends were here. I also had a really, really fun time with my friends. And I never get to go shopping in Sayulita because everything is so expensive. But I had been looking for a few pieces of jewelry around town. I'd been thinking about a few things that I wanted to get, so when I was with them and while we were actively looking to shop, I got a few things, which was really nice. But yeah, that's like a little life update a little thing that's been happening, which is crazy. And now I'll actually get into the episode topic. I just really wanted to talk about that because it's really fun and it's really crazy, and I don't know, it's just unbelievable. And I'm like still like thinking about it right now, talking about it right now. I'm still in like crazy shock over the fact that I got recognized by my old She-Ra TikTok videos. Like that's so it's so unbelievable. But anyways, I do want to discuss how like SUP is changing, how it has been changing in the last few years. There's 3 things that I really want to go through specifically, and just kind of things that I've been talking about. This is open discussion, so if you have any more things to talk about or to maybe bring into the conversation, I definitely want to hear it. Whether you're on YouTube, you can comment, or you can send me a DM through Instagram, whatever floats your boat. The first topic that I want to go through is that throughout the past few years, there has been an increase in need of experience. And that pretty much is like the state at where you are at as a beginner and the state of where you're at as like a professional or a competitive paddler is throughout the years, and slowly, like, it's separating more. As the sport is slowly developing more and more, people are developing more techniques, like better strength. People are getting stronger. People are understanding how the sport works a little bit more. So people are continuously developing and getting stronger. And as that is happening, that separation between advanced and beginner is slowly increasing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't want it to seem like it is a bad thing, because at the end of the day, that just kind of shows how much the sport is developing and growing. But it also definitely kind of puts people in a situation where they have to put in a lot more effort to paddle or to be a good paddler, if that makes sense. And again, that's not a bad thing. I'm not gonna like say that this is a bad thing, that people need to actually work harder to be good at the sport, because obviously people work hard to be part of the sport. But back in the day, you were able to just hop on a random ass board and be decently strong and be able to compete against people that were around the same level as you. The process of learning is forever going to stay the same, pretty much. Like, you get on a wider board, you kind of learn how to paddle, and bit by bit, your board starts getting, like, I don't know, more professional, a little bit skinnier. Your technique starts to get a little better. You figure out what equipment works for you, what doesn't. But reaching those elite levels has, in the past several years, has proven to become more and more difficult. And again, I'm going to keep on saying this. I'm not saying this in a bad way. It just means that the sport is developing. And honestly, that is amazing. It is growing. It is getting better. People are learning new ways to paddle. People are exceeding the limits of what we thought were the limits of stand-up paddleboarding. But it's also just the fact that that separation is slowly increasing, and it can stir people away from it, especially because the technology is advancing a lot too, and that's my other point. Technology in the sport of stand-up paddleboarding is developing so much, and to be good at the sport or to get anywhere in the sport, you need to have good equipment, you need to have a good board, you need to have a good paddle. In order to keep up with professionals on a competitive level, you have to have good equipment. And there's obviously exceptions, right? You don't always have to have the new and best thing, but having older equipment or lesser quality equipment is definitely limiting in the sport. So people are incentivized to buy new equipment, buy the newest things, buy a better paddle, buy a better board. And what's happening is that it is slowly becoming more expensive to participate in the sport. Back in the day, you could have this beat down little like Riviera Rogue, like Bronner, and everyone else would have the same, and it would be an equal playing field. But now everything's an equal playing field, but several $1,000s higher up, if that makes sense. And it's what's happening is that this increase in technology and the expenses too is causing people to reach their full potential in the sport, mainly because a lot of people can't afford it. There was this guy that I was talking to a while back, and he was talking to us about our paddle boards, and he was like, yeah, I used to do it, but now everything is too expensive, so I kind of just like left the sport. And that was sad to hear, because paddling itself is a very, very small sport. So the fact that people are now dropping off because it is an expensive sport, because it is getting more expensive, it's sad to hear. And unfortunately, there isn't as much that we can do about it. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because on one side, technology is advancing so much and it's getting expensive to where not that many people can afford to be a part of it. But the fact that technology is advancing so much, that just means that the sport is advancing a lot too. Like this sport is becoming more professional, more serious, like it's advancing. And SUP as a sport, we need it to be advanced. We need it to be acknowledged as like a serious sport because it is kind of small. And there's a lot of people that don't know about it. When I did my Europe trip back in October, and I would tell people what I did, and I think I was with a group of like 25 kids or 25 people, because we were all 18. Not a single person knew what stand-up paddleboard racing is. And like almost like every other week, there's always someone that approaches us while we're paddling, and they're like, hey, what is this? So we explain ourselves. So yeah, in conclusion, there's like the advancement of technology is unfortunately stirring people away from the sport due to its increase in prices, but also the fact that the technology is developing is slowly making it more and more known. Do you ever see like do you just casually see a 14-foot board around like where you live? Like, did you used to see that? Now it's getting like more and more common for people to see these boards, because also they stand out. The boards nowadays are very, very clearly not your normal paddleboard. Whereas what it used to be maybe like a 25-inch, 30-inch, like 12.6 board. It didn't stand out as much as they do now. So that's like what I want to talk about my second point. Now I want to get into the third point and how paddling is developing through two federations. This is a very like original instance where SUP isn't necessarily considered a specific federation sport. There's parts of paddling where the Canoe Federation takes over, and there's other parts of the sport where the Surfing Federation takes over, the ICF and the ISA. And so what's happening with these two federations kind of like influencing the sport is that there has become like this separation between ICF races and ISA races. And I'm going to keep on saying this. This is not in any way a bad thing. I am putting out the information, and you can take whatever you want. You can have your own opinion as well. I am not telling you what to think. I am putting out all the information and allowing you to decide what you want to do with this information, okay? I'm not telling you what to think. But anyways, we kind of like seen in the past several years the development of paddling, specifically in the Canoe Federation, where it's a lot of flat water, straightaways. They still do technical races, but it's all again on flat water. And then we also see races through the ISA, the Surfing Federation, where it's more heavy, like open water conditions, wind, waves, all these things. And what's happening is that the canoe side of paddling is becoming a little bit more popular because it is more accessible. It's so much easier to get on a lake or a river than it is to find an open body of water like an ocean. And it's becoming really popular in European countries, specifically because there isn't as much ocean in Europe. A lot of countries in Europe obviously don't have a coastline. So people who want to participate in paddleboarding can do it on lakes, on rivers, through the Canoe Federation. And it's so awesome that this way of paddling has grown and become a lot more accessible and known, and is also kind of spreading to America and just like other parts of the world. But that also kind of means that there's been a lot of like Canoe Federation influences on the Surf Federation races. And I don't know if this is a worldwide thing. I'm not going to claim that this is a worldwide thing, but specifically in Mexico, and this is going to be where my bias comes in, okay? I'll admit that. I am definitely a Surf Federation girly. I much prefer the Surf Federation races. I prefer open water races. Frankly, because I believe that, personally, I like that little challenge. I like that little, like, oh, you always got to be attentive in the open water because you don't know what's going to happen. So I definitely very much prefer Surf Federation open water races. And also, there's a lot of Surfing Federation races here and Canoe Federation races here in Mexico. But what's happening is that they're almost kind of like mixing. This was the case for a little bit, and they have improved a lot. But I remember the Surfing Federation Nationals back in 2022, because the conditions were quote unquote like too messy on the open water ocean, we ended up doing the sprints in the lagoon in flat water straight away. And leading up to the day that we were going to do the tech race was going to be on there too. And the distance race was going to be on the lagoon too. All of this flat water, while literally 2 feet away was the open ocean. And that situation kind of really made me very frustrated because I did not want these Canoe Federation influences on the Surfing Federation Mexican Nationals. Excuse me, like I feel like I have a right to be mad about that situation because I train for open water. I am an open water paddler. I don't specialize in flat water. It's not whether or not I'm good at one or the other. It's also the fact that the federation that was hosting these nationals was the Surfing Federation, so they should have the event on the ocean. We did the sprints in the flat water, but we ended up doing the tech race and the distance on open ocean. So that was good. It ended up working out, and now there is a clear separation between canoe races and surfing races, but there's still kind of like that overlap. And there's even been canoe races where they've been in the open ocean. So there is always going to be like some sort of overlap, but I've kind of learned to accept that, like, okay, the canoe races are canoe races and the surfing races are surfing races. And canoe is flat water and surfing is open ocean. So I definitely feel like I personally do have a big voice when it comes to Mexican paddling. Not incredibly big, but people like to hear what I say. And so I'm willing to stand up for my opinions when, like, hey, this race is for the Surfing Federation, but you're acting like it's a canoe race, and vice versa. And I've also kind of learned that, like, a canoe race is a canoe race. I'm going to respect that if they choose to do it on a flat water or if they do it open ocean. I'm okay with it. And same thing with the Surfing Federation. I am open to the fact that they will do it in an open ocean, but I am not okay if they do it on flat water. I understand that if there's any like flat conditions on the open ocean, that's okay. Like, I just want it to be on the ocean, right? Because that's the Surfing Federation. That is definitely my bias, and I'm going to be open with my opinion on that. But yeah, I don't know if that's a worldwide thing at the moment or what, but I definitely feel like the Canoe Federation has its own races, the Surfing Federation has its own races, and they both are kind of influencing each other in a way that maybe isn't, I don't know, the best thing. It's good and bad. It's so awesome that paddleboarding has 2 world championships. I think it's awesome, and they're both different, so that if a paddler is a flat water paddler, they can go to the ICF, but if the paddler is an open water paddler, they can go to the ISAs. And they both can cross over too. You don't have to go to only one. I do think it is really nice. Another part of this conversation with the canoe and surfing is that people are starting to specialize in certain things. And again, I don't want to sound like I am not okay with this. Obviously, with the sport developing, there is going to be changes. It's not always going to be the same. But there are people that are specializing for whether it be sprints, tech race, or distance. Specifically sprint and distance, right? Because those are the two extremes. So there are cases where people are starting to be specific with their disciplines, if that makes sense. And it's almost kind of starting to have like it's becoming a slightly different dynamic where what paddling used to be and what it kind of still is now, okay? The whole point is to do 2 to 3 races, and you win in each one, and then also the overall points you'll get for that as well. Now, there's a lot of people specializing in certain things, and it's not a bad thing. I don't want to get canceled. I'm not going to get canceled on this. There are people specializing for different things, and it's also kind of changing the dynamic in a way that people choose to only do one thing. So that's also kind of changing. You know how like in running, how everyone kind of like chooses a specific discipline? I think it's almost like it's kind of turning into running, where people are choosing a specific discipline in paddling. And I definitely think that is interesting, because if you like physically are not a fan of long distance, you can specialize in sprints or specialize in tech race, or vice versa. If you are not a sprint racer, your body just can't handle that, but you are a really good endurance racer, you can specialize in long distance. So the dynamic in general is changing, and whether you see that as good or bad, that's up to you. But yeah, I think those are all of the topics that I wanted to go through today. Again, if you have any other topic of conversation, another thought, please let me know. I want to have a discussion about this, because I am kind of leaving it open-ended just because I want to hear what other people think, and I also don't want to sound like I am mad or frustrated about these changes, because you can be happy about these changes and not happy about these changes, and both of them are completely valid. The times are changing, and whether you like it or not, they will continue to change. So yeah, I think that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I kind of like maybe brought a few things up that maybe you hadn't really considered before. I don't know. I feel like the topic of the fact that paddling is changing isn't as talked about for some reason, and maybe I'm just not in that scene to where I see it, but I do feel like that not that many people are talking about how paddling is changing, and I definitely do want to have a conversation about it, because like at the end of the day, the sport is developing, the sport is growing, and even though like a few months ago it was no longer considered for the Olympics of 2028, hell, we have 2 world championships. Like every year there's like an up and coming paddler or group from a country that we've never really heard of before. That's part of the paddling scene. Like we've already But yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure to rate the podcast, maybe comment or subscribe if you're on YouTube. Again, rate the podcast and maybe leave a little comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I know you can comment on Apple Podcasts, but I don't know about Spotify. And also, I just found out I'm on Amazon Music. So if you're also on Amazon Music, you can do that too. You can rate it. Please. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys next week. Bye-bye.